The following podcast you're about to listen to is brought to you by the Push Start Media Network, where everything you do in life begins with pushing start. What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the SYE Quick Hits. I am your humble host, Bryce Benjamin, along with my guy, Ed Rueter. Today's episode, we are discussing the Atlanta Braves, well, I should say the 2019 first place in the NL East Atlanta Braves. Last year, they finished with a record of 97-65, and unfortunately lost in 5 games in the NLDS to the St. Louis Cardinals. Looking to come back this season with another superior season, potentially can win this division again and have a lot of young talent on this team. And man, we might be looking at something very good in the near future here. Ed, your overall thoughts on this Atlanta Braves team?
Man, I think you just did it. You just summed it up, man.
Yeah.
Close the video, shut her down, man. Shut down the studio. It's over. No, that was a great intro, man. That's exactly what happened. They came out, they surprised some people. They were a lot better than people thought, a lot more quickly than people thought. Mm-hmm. Anyway, this is one of those teams where if I was doing this exact same thing last year, I would have had them maybe third or fourth in the division and saying things like, well, they've got a lot of great young talent. They've got a lot of great players that could break out. And if they do this and if they do that, they could be really successful. Well, all those players came out and did all those things. Ronald Acuna put in the first legitimate bid for a 40-40 season in quite a long time, fell just short. He's going to be, one of the most exciting young stars in baseball for years to come. He does it all. He plays great defense.
He is a beast.
He's a special player. 40 home runs. He steals bases. He's exciting to watch. He's like young and energetic and fun with the whole youth infusion coming into baseball recently. He's definitely at the forefront of that.
And he has that look as well. I think that can definitely attract urban youth, where you look at somebody like that, and then if I'm a young black kid in the inner city or whatever, wherever you are, you look at that guy, and that would attract you to actually watch this team and probably get into baseball overall.
Yeah, I think just the fun factor for me is like watching these guys play. You'll see clips of him and SYE Albies, who's another great young player for them who plays second base. They're just goofing around. They're just kids.
Yeah,
you can tell they're really out there. Sometimes, when things get a little bit cynical, when we're talking about all the money involved in baseball, and I've already talked about the Yankees as an evil empire, and
yes,
all the free agency money that's being passed around. It's very easy to get cynical and just look at all the money and all of just the dirty side of baseball, and we kind of forget that it's a beautiful game.
Yeah,
mostly being played by kids out there, and the Braves, Acuna and Albies absolutely remind you of that on a daily basis. They're a whole hell of a lot of fun to watch.
Real quick, with Acuna, you touched on his numbers. Obviously batted .280 last year, 41 home runs, 101 RBIs, and then almost 40 stolen bases there as well with 37. So he has come out and said that he wants to be the first player in history to have a 50-50 season. That'd be crazy.
That's incorrect. I was the first player that wanted to have a 50-50 season, but I didn't make it, and I didn't have the. There's that thing that you need. Oh, the talent. I had none of the talent that was required to do any of that. But yes, Acuna. I think 50-50, not out of the question. I don't know that he has the power. So right after coming off and saying he had 40 home runs last year, I think everybody kind of knows that the balls were juiced the last few years.
Yeah.
So if anybody's not in the know, MLB actually purchased Rawlings, the company that makes the baseballs, 3 years ago, and suddenly there were record numbers of home runs being hit in 2017, 18, and 19. Not a coincidence. They actually came out and admitted it, that said, yes, they were stringing the baseballs up differently. So all of a sudden, you've got these, 5'9", 170 pounds soaking wet middle infielders that are all hitting 30 home runs a year. I think that all comes back. Also, one of the things that usually trips people up is actually the stolen bases.
Yeah.
A lot of times you don't want your stars running as much. The stolen bases, one of the plays where you're going to see people get injured the most. People sliding in head first. We can hurt their chest, their face, their hands as they're going into the bag.
Yeah.
You slide feet first, you can turn an ankle, have a knee problem. All kinds of things can happen when you're stealing bases. So a lot of times teams don't like to see their best guys stealing bases. And on top of that, when the league is built around sluggers that are hitting home runs a little bit more often, the stolen base becomes a little bit less relevant on a team that can hit a lot of home runs. And I think this year's Atlanta Braves certainly qualify as a team that can hit a lot of home runs.
Yeah, man. And then you look at going through the rest of their lineup there. How do you feeling?
If I was a Braves fan, I'd be feeling pretty happy this year. Freddie Freeman is a perennial all-star. He's just one of the best all-around players in the league.
Yeah, MVP candidate in and out.
Yep, he's just
Iron Man status.
Awesome guy. He's just a really great player, and he has been for years. He's kind of underrated. You don't hear, when people talk about the very best players in baseball, you don't hear his name a lot, but he should be in that conversation for sure.
Yeah, last year, 38 homers, not bad at 295.
Yep, and it just seems like he does that every year. If there's a knock on him at all, it's that he can be a little bit streaky. There are periods where he'll go through some pretty heavy funks and just have a little trouble getting out. But year out, his production is always there. Even when he goes through those long slumps, he seems to break out of them in a big way. Then he'll just be on fire for a few weeks afterwards. So,
hey, man, every team needs somebody that can streaks.
Yeah, sometimes putting a streak together, you get hot at the right time.
I love streaking.
And streaking, yeah, they don't even show it on TV anymore, though.
I know, right?
They cut that right off. You just hear something like, "Oh, and look at this fool out there running." We're not going to show him because we don't want to. We don't want to have repeat behavior.
We don't want to disappoint our viewers.
Yeah, that's right. There's children out there. But yeah, man. Looking at the rest really quickly, Marcell Ozuna and Ender Enciarte are going to be the other two outfielders, both great players. They can hit towards the middle of the lineup. And then you've got a little bit of unproven talent with Dansby Swanson and Johan Camargo. Both of those guys are a little bit younger on the left side of the infield. They both can play for sure. They've both shown flashes of being really great. They just haven't put it together consistently yet. And if those two guys can do that, this lineup has essentially no holes in it at all. And they're going to be really tough on opposing pitching.
Swanson is starting to make a decent turnaround as well. He's starting to try to live up to that number one overall potential. Last year, he batted .251 to 17 home runs and 65 RBIs. So we'll see if he can continue on with that streak going into the 2020 season to be a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, I think consistency is the key for him, staying healthy. He was, like you said, the number one pick in baseball. Obviously, that comes with a lot of pressure. Hasn't quite lived up to that yet, but luckily the Braves have had a lot of hits on the rest of their young prospects. Acuna, Albies, those guys have come up and played absolute great baseball. Speaking of their young prospects, there's another one that if Camargo slips at all, or if there's a necessity or an injury, there's another young kid, Austin Riley, who plays third base. He may or may not start on the roster opening day, but he is an absolute slugger. I think that he could hit a ton of home runs if he gets the opportunity to play.
Nice. Moving on to this pitching staff there. This is a very interesting rotation, and you and I were just discussing it during our pre-production meeting here. They're surrounded with like a good combination of both veteran players and young guys with tons of potential. Kind of break this down for us, Ed?
Sure, absolutely. So if we want to talk about the veterans first, some of the guys, interesting, it was kind of a quiet move, but the Braves acquired Felix Hernandez, so the former king, I suppose. I don't know if he's still King Felix or not. It's going to be kind of hard to see him as King Felix, maybe like the Duke or something like that. The Duke. He's going to need a new nickname for sure in Atlanta because I don't think he's the king anymore. But a great veteran presence, I would have to imagine, is kind of why you bring a guy like this in. He's going to be out there with Cole Hamels, who is a proven monster in the playoffs, and another great veteran presence. He's going to miss some time. He's going to be out about 2 to 3 weeks. But those two guys on the back end of your rotation are just good veteran presences to have. They could eat some innings for you when healthy. So That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
The real key for them, though, for success, the reason that I have them finishing second in the division is because despite their offense being awesome, despite having a great young core that's a lot of fun to watch, I think that their pitching is just behind the rest of the division enough to put them back on a few losses that are going to keep them out of the division title.
Yeah.
But they do have a great young pitcher, an all-star, Mike Soroka. They've got Max Fried and Mike Fulton-Evans. Those are 3 young pitchers, all kinds of promise there. Really, they've all shown flashes of being brilliant, where they look like front end of the rotation aces, and not quite there yet. But if any one or two of those guys, along with maybe a little bit of a resurgence from Cole Hamels, they have a ton of pitching prospects that might come up, including Ian Anderson and Kyle Wright.
Yes.
So if any of those guys kind of blossom into a true front end of the rotation ace, this is going to be a very formidable team.
And they also added some additions to their bullpen as well with Sean Green and Will Smith. So that could potentially have some good ramifications there.
Yeah, and Mark Melanson, already a very good closer. I think that he could really do some damage on a good team here. This is a team that's going to have to jump on you early.
Yeah.
If they can jump out to some leads and get 5, 6, 7 innings out of their starter, Will Smith, Shane Green, Mark Melanson come in, shut the door. That's going to be this team's key for success, is jumping on teams early and hoping for the best. I'm not sure that if any of their starting pitchers get dusted up and they've got to lean on the back end of their bullpen and then lean on the offense to score a ton of runs. Although that's not a key for success for any team, I think particularly for the Braves, that's going to be a really tough way to win.
This Atlanta team, I look at this roster up and down, and they're right on the line of like young developing team that can potentially, obviously win the division again. But and they're right on the cusp, it seems like, to being a potential perennial World Series contender, like always in there, was what I'm trying to say. Very young team, but if everything comes together, this could be like a potential dynasty, man. Like, you looking at all these young players. They got Acuna locked up 8 years, $100 million. That's a fucking steal.
Yeah.
Same thing with Ozzy. They signed him to a 7-year, $35 million deal. Those are 2 steals right there of 2 very young all-star, superstar caliber players. Well, obviously Acuna is a superstar. And the Braves this upcoming season are looking to three-peat, man. Looking to do a three-peat division champs. Pacoda got them at 83 and 79. Ed, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I think, maybe a little bit better than that. Again, I've said it before in some of our quick hits that I think Pacoda might undervalue some of the top teams and overvalue some of the bottom teams.
Yeah.
I think that they win a few more games than that. I don't have them winning the division this year just because I don't think that they're going to sneak up on anybody like they did last year. They're going to see these guys coming.
Yes.
This team is a legitimate threat. And again, you play the game on the diamond, so anything can happen, but I do have them actually finishing second in the division behind the Mets, who I think are going to finally stay healthy and take home the crown.
Boom. There it is. And we're going to wrap it up there. That is another episode of SYE Quick Hits, season preview for the Atlanta Braves. Make sure you tune in for future episodes of Quick Hits. We got some great content coming out in the near future. Until then, drink some water. Enjoy your day.